how you can get a hold of me. I work with vocational rehabilitation services and workforce solutions services. You can locate our offices with the following screen. You can also locate VR through several of the methods listed here. You can call, you can go to an online referral site and refer yourself, and you can also locate your local VR office, which was also available on the first slide via a QR code. Some of the things that we do at our workforce centers is we have employment specialists that can help you. You can walk in the door and get help with resumes. We have accessible workstations and several other things that you can use in addition to our printers. And last but not least, how you can get a hold of me and resources. As a navigator, you can go to my Padlet, where I have vocational rehabilitation flyers and information, and then also any upcoming webinars that I have. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Allison now, and I appreciate working with you, Allison. Thanks.
Thanks, April. It's always a pleasure to be back with you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for taking your time to join us this afternoon. Hope everybody's recovering from their holiday weekend, and I hope everybody's staying COVID-free. We're in Fort Bend County, and it is just raging here. Again, it seems like it's just never going to go away. So hopefully we'll stay free from that. From a housekeeping perspective, we are in webinar mode today. So we can't see you or hear you, but we know you're there, and we're glad that you're here. April's going to be watching the chat box today as we're going through this presentation. We invite you to put your questions in the chat box. We're going to get to just as many as we can during the time that we have together. Today, we're going from 12 to 1. So if you're planning your lunch hour, that is what we are doing today. So I'm Allison Scobbard, Consolidated Planning Group. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We do a lot of webinars. If you've joined us in the past, we're glad you're back. If this is your first time, we're glad you're here. You're in the right place. Our webinars are really designed to give you the tools and resources that you need to be successful when you're planning for your loved one with a disability. We have a YouTube channel, the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. All of our past webinars live out there. There's over 300 webinars out there, a variety of topics. We try to label them intelligently so that way you can search the topics for the step that you're on in life and kind of where you're at. We do a lot of holistic planning. We put protection plans in place. People come to us because they don't know how much they need to fund the special needs trust. They want to make sure that their child is okay when they're gone and that the planning is in place and that we leave money to our loved ones in the right manner to preserve their eligibility for state and federally funded programs. So we do a lot of talk about transition planning, lifetime care plans. We help people set up ABLE accounts. And then, of course, we do a lot of the advocacy that we're here doing today. So I always spend a little bit of just a quick minute to say, what is the difference between your average financial advisor and a special needs planner? And, you know, we have a lot of the similar licenses, but we're specifically nuanced for special needs. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. And a lot of times people call us because they need such things such as guardianship or a special needs trust or things like that. And the truth is that we work collaboratively with the attorneys that handle those things. So your special needs planning attorney, they're not going to do what we do. They're not the money, the finance, the Social Security stuff. They're the legal documents. And so we work hand in hand with your professionals, and we really strongly advise the families that we work with to work with professionals that are specifically nuanced in special needs. Your situation is specialized. It's not the same for everything. And that also is including when we're planning for kids with disabilities to go to college. There are a lot of college planners out there, but very few of them are nuanced in planning for college for an individual with a disability. We are going to make a referral to someone today that does a good job with that. But because our situation is so highly specialized and because there is a lot at stake when it comes to planning for our loved ones, it is truly, truly important that you work with a specialist. We are not fans of doing it yourself or get, your neighbor. We always say that your neighbor, the real estate attorney, to help you set up your special needs trust or guardianship or things like that. A lot of mistakes, simple mistakes can be made, and it can cause your child to not be eligible for benefits or to lose their eligibility. So it's really, really important. We've been around for 30 years of experience, and we are basically an advisory and consulting firm. So we work with other professionals that you may already have on board, and help you take the next step in your planning journey. So today we're talking about higher education. What's next for your loved one with a disability? So I like talking about this because I think a lot of times, a lot of us families are feeling overwhelmed, or maybe feeling like it doesn't look hopeful or optimistic, or what maybe the next isn't always that clear when we're thinking about our kids. So first things I always like to talk about here is setting realistic expectations, having realistic expectations, not Facebook expectations or Instagram expectations of where everything is perfect, and everybody's child is perfect, and everybody's going to school on a full ride scholarship, etc. Some of our kids, they have other disabilities, but they don't have an intellectual disability, but they have other things that are holding them back. A lot of the ones that we love have intellectual disabilities, but there are programs all across the state, all across the country, even if your child struggles and has an intellectual disability. So when I think about realistic expectations, some of the things that I'm thinking about and I'm talking about is, what does this look like? Is it going to be a traditional path or a non-traditional path? Where are they as far as getting where they're going? Are they going to stay in school until they're 21 or 22, go into an 18+ program? Is there a transition program in your community that you've got your eye on? Because we want to think about like their maturity level, where they are, education-wise, and just understand that the path may not be at 18 that they're going to higher education. Maybe it's 22. Maybe they started at 28. And so basically, we just really want to say that there's really no comparisons, and just, they aren't behind, they are where they are. And when we're the Facebook parents or the Instagram parents and looking at what everybody else is doing, sometimes we're putting them in a box, in a place where they're not ready yet for. So we want them to have little wins along the way and success in whatever it is that they are doing, okay? So transition programs, trade school, community colleges. There's a lot of licenses and certificates out there. So maybe your child has, math calculation issues, or maybe, there's all kinds of learning disabilities that are out there, that there's gaps, but there's a lot of programs out there or trades out there that they could be looking at, that even though there's shortcomings that they have, it's going to be okay, because they're going to go through this training program, and they're not going to have to do the math that they might have to do if they were going to go do a 2-year or 4-year degree. So of course we have the university degree programs. We have certificate programs and licenses. Some of the things that I think about is a reduced course load. It's not a race. So as parents, we know that the full college load, if we have other kids in college, neurotypical kids, we know that full college load is 12 hours, and some of them are taking even more than that. But maybe your child isn't ready for that. Can they take one class? Can we get started? It's not a race. We don't have to do it all in 4 years or 2 years or whatever that is. But what we want them to do is have success along the way while they're getting where they're going. So if we start the first semester and we take one class, or maybe they're doing dual credit in high school, and they take that, there's usually at most of these colleges, community colleges and universities, there's usually like a class, I forget the name of it, somebody knows it and wants to put it in the chat box, but it's basically introduction to university studies, or introduction to college studies, and the whole course is designed to help the student learn how to be effective and how to have success in a college setting. So that is one that I recommend, and they actually do get credit for that. So a lot of schools have dual credit or dual enrollment enrollment where they can, some of their classes that they're still taking in high school, they can get college credit for. So you may want to look at some of those programs. If we've got anybody that's out here that are homeschooling their kids, there's definitely lots of programs for dual credit in the homeschooling setting with all of the community colleges. We have a question, April?
Okay. We do. We have someone who's asking, I believe, what dual enrollment is.
Yes, so the dual enrollment is just really they're enrolled in high school or they're enrolled in homeschool. They're still a high school student and they're taking 4 credit classes on the college level. Most of the community colleges offer programs such as these. And so, and there's usually a dual credit enrollment officer that works with each of these schools. All of these high schools know about dual credit. Your guidance counselors, they know about dual credit and they can talk to you about that. Historically, when my kids are a little bit older, but when my kids went through it, yes, it was free. Dual credit was free, except for you had to purchase the books. So you would have to purchase the books, but it was basically free. So, but you can definitely check into that, and that's a good way to start getting, getting some credits under their belt. And the other idea too is maybe they're not ready for that, or maybe their course load is too busy already. The school year's already started, but maybe you can kind of, look at taking a summer course or something along those lines. If they're, in high school, getting going, taking a summer course, it can start, that dual credit can start as early as their sophomore year, okay? So, we also talk about partnerships with other organizations. And we're gonna talk about some of those today where they could live on campus. There's a lot of programs out there and we're gonna name a lot of them. We don't work for them, they don't work for us, but we're aware of their programs and we like to share the programs with other families. But what is a non-traditional path? What if, they're not ready for school right now? Maybe they'll be ready later. Maybe they're just not, they're not cut out for that. That's not what they love. It's not what makes them tick. But that's where I think about the Texas Workforce Commission, VR, Vocational Rehab, and April was mentioning that as well. There are a lot of programs throughout the state that are designed to help a individual with a disability that has impediments to employment get work, right? And to help close some of those gaps. And April is going to talk more about that in just a little bit as well. But maybe they need to go to work for a little while. Some of our kids, from a maturity perspective, they're not where they need to be yet. They're still getting where they're going. And so maybe it's a little bit of work or something along those lines. There's also something with the Department of Labor. There's such things as registered apprenticeships where they're training and they're learning and they're actually getting paid on the job as well. And then one program that I have found, and we've had a lot of clients that have used this program, this Project Search program. The kids actually still do have to be in high school to be able to be involved with Project Search. But we've seen kids have, apprenticeships at various hospitals. We've seen them at DuPont, like big companies where they had internships basically that turned into full-time jobs with benefits, et cetera. So we just like to share all those things because there's a lot more than just, really just straight up going, to college right off the bat, okay? So there's 6 traits that students need to succeed, and this is all students. This is our neurotypical students, and this is our students that learn differently. So self-awareness. People that show self-awareness of their strengths and their weaknesses in both academic and non-academic settings, that is one point that is important for success in higher education, being proactive, persevering, kind of getting through the tough stuff, some goal setting, even if they need some help, but being aware and using effective social support systems. And then, of course, the emotional coping strategies. And these are things, so sometimes parents hear this and they say, okay, no, okay, maybe one. They're kind of looking at these 6 traits. And the reality of it is a lot of our neurotypical kids don't have all of these 6 traits at first, whenever they first, graduate high school. And that's why we see do-overs. That's why we see, neurotypical kids go to the community college or go to the university and they don't make it, right? And they have to kind of come back and kind of get their do-over, if you will. So I think one of the big things that I really like to spend time talking about is the accommodations on the college level and beyond. This is really an important topic. We're used to accommodations in the public school, and a lot of even the private schools have accommodations as well. These accommodations do not necessarily transfer. It's not just a smooth transfer of like, oh yes, you call them and you say, I got accommodations at the public school and this is what I need here. There's a process, and it's important for you to understand the process of each of the schools that you may be applying for with your student, because the process is different at every single one of the schools, which I found pretty annoying. Like, I wish it was just a uniform, here's higher education process for getting, for getting accommodations, but it really doesn't work like that. So what I would say is, if you know that your student truly needs accommodations, your student has been successful because of the accommodations that they have in place in the school, make sure you first start by researching these schools that your child may have interest in, as far as a path, whether it's a certificate, a license, or a degree. So first start there. The very next stop I did as a parent was researching the Offices of Disability. The Offices of Disability, they could be called ODS, they could be called the Ability Office, they could be called any number of things, but all colleges and universities, they all have an Office of Disability. So researching them, how big are they? Do they have the supports in place to support your student and the accommodations that your student needs? What is the process? There's an application process. Usually you can submit your application online to apply for accommodations, but you need to do that prior to the semester starting. Because if you wait until the semester starts, the child could be starting their classes with both hands behind their back, and it's 2 or 3 weeks before they actually get their accommodations, and they're already behind, they're already feeling overwhelmed, they may already be failing, and it's hard to pick up the pieces from that. So I can't stress enough to do your homework on the Office of Disability and get those accommodations in place early, okay? So one of the things, as far as the accommodations are concerned, usually they're going to request testing that has been updated in the last 3 to 5 years. Now, one thing, and I know, April, you can talk about this, but if you have a child that is in VR, a lot of the times in VR, they've done that testing. That testing that we're talking about is expensive, but a lot of times they have done that testing, and that testing will suffice, and you can use that to request the accommodations. They will be willing to take a copy of your accommodations that you have in the public school, but they're not bound to give you the same things that you have in the public school. Some things that you can get in the public school you can't get at the university, like reduced course load or reduced homework. So if, this guy assigns 40 problems, your child can do 20. Well, they can do that in the public school. They don't do that in the college, okay? So there's some things that are just not there, but note takers, extra time, testing in a private setting, voice to text recognition software. There's a lot of accommodations on the college level. So make sure that you've got your updated testing. That testing that they're looking for is that neuropsych testing, the learning disabilities testing. Sometimes you've had that testing done in the public school. Sometimes they will take that. Sometimes VR does that testing. Sometimes you are going to be a private pay, and a mental health place, a psychologist or psychiatrist office does some of those testings. April, do we have a question?
We do. We have someone that has a 17-year-old son who is a senior, and he will start applying for college. And their question is, do you know if there is any program where we can get help with all college applications and accommodations?
We do have somebody that we're going to refer today, and she is nuanced in working with individuals with special needs. Now, as far as people doing the accommodations and the applications for you, I don't know too many people that are going to do the applications. There are, it's not as hard as one might think. I mean, but The college planners for special needs are nuanced on helping you try to find the right fit for your student. They're getting to know the student, and they're very aware of what programs are out there, and they're making recommendations in that way, but some of them may offer some of the additional services. One thing that you guys need to know, I'm a fan of having a power of attorney. When we send our kids off to college, whether they're neurotypical or they have a disability, I am a fan of having a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney in the event that there is a crisis at school, in the event that there's an accident. It goes on and on and on. So that's up to you, but I am a fan of that. The FERPA is something that is needed. So you can say it all day long. I've heard it a million times. What do you mean you won't talk to me? I'm paying for this tuition. You won't talk to me? Nope, they won't. Even if they're under 18, they won't talk to you if they're going to college unless that FERPA is in place. So the FERPA, your student signs authorizing you to be able to get information on, you know, as it relates to their academics and the finance and all that kind of stuff. So the FERPA is something that you can download from the school's website, or you can call and they'll send it to you. But just know that that is going to be necessary, and you can argue till you're blue in the face about how you pay for everything, and they just don't care. It's the law. The FERPA is the law, okay? So, but reasonable accommodations are required if it doesn't pose undue hardship. So when we went on this journey, we were, you know, really looking at a lot of different schools. And of course, we had narrowed the schools down by, you know, degree path and then the offices of disability. And so the reason I say to do your homework is all the offices of disability are not created equally. Some are very huge and robust, and they have great staff and really, really great support for your student. And others are run by one or two people, and they're, you know, they're not huge, and they may not have the resources that your student needs. So that's why you want to check on that. So we've also, we had mentioned the Department of Labor earlier. There are job accommodations as well, and April Martin and her team, as far as job accommodations and things like that, there's a lot of ways to go about doing that, and ways to go about doing that in the right way. I see someone that says, how does a power of attorney work in college? So a power of attorney can be active now or active in incapacitation. I had ours active now. But basically the power of attorney, if the power of attorney is on file, healthcare power of attorney, FERPA, these are going to give you authorization. They're still going to ask for the FERPA even if you have the power of attorney. But I'm more a bigger fan of the healthcare power of attorney, especially, you know, we've seen a lot of mental health crises over the years where kids were taken out to a mental health facility. They won't even tell you where your child is. If you do not have that healthcare power of attorney in place and your child is in an accident and they carry him to the hospital, your child is carried to a mental health facility, they won't even tell you. Like for instance, if you're in school in San Antonio, you know how many mental hospitals are out there? It's a needle in a haystack. They won't even tell you. It's just, oh yeah, somewhere in San Antonio. So that's why I'm a fan of that. People do get sick. There are accidents and things do happen. So it is, you know, I think it's important to have that. And an attorney can help you. There are, we're not fans of do it yourself, but even like a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney, if it's notarized, you can probably use it. You can download one and get one, and you can probably buy one and make sure it's a Texas-worthy one. But I'm a fan of an attorney so they can talk to you about the different types and which one's better versus the other, and that kind of thing. So what we're going to do today, everybody's getting a copy of today's slides and a recording of today's presentation. There's a lot of links in here, and we're not going to go to all of them. We're not going to go to any of them. But what we tried to do is give a good listing of programs that are available all across the state of Texas for individuals with disabilities. So when it comes to applying, if we've got a kid that's 17, they're starting their senior year, the FAFSA opens up, it opened up October 1st. So you could have already completed your FAFSA. If you haven't completed your FAFSA, you probably should. And we're going to talk more about that in a moment. But these programs they're all a little bit different, and they all have different enrollment times and application requirements, whether they have an essay. Some of these programs may be, you know, like they might be like a certificate program. It's not a degree program, but maybe they're learning horticulture, or maybe they're learning hospitality industry or things like that. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to research these programs early and start your spreadsheet. I apologize in advance for telling you to make a spreadsheet. But what I found, again, frustrating as a parent, you know, navigating this with my own kids, is what I found is every single one of these schools is different. The date that their application opens up, how many students they take, how long the programs are. I mean, some programs could be 2 years, it could be 4 years, it could be 9 months. There's so many different things. Some might have an option of doing it online and in person, or maybe they're only in person. So you're going to want to research these, create your spreadsheet, and start, you know, making a list of the ones that you're most interested in, because there's not just an unlimited number of seats in these programs. So you're going to want to get your application in early and to give yourself the best option at the ones that you're most interested in. So we have lots on here. There are programs on here that are specifically designed for individuals with a disability. We have other programs that are on here simply because they have a good Office of Disability, right? So it's important to do your research. Some of these programs, this non-Parel, this is in Houston, this is not a college program, but it's like a computer programming type program. They're learning a skill so they can work in the computer programming industry going forward. And then the Lynn University, that is actually in Florida, but they have some good programs for kids with disabilities as well. So we've got, so just another list, we've got Texas A&M, University of North Texas. Guys, they are all over the state. In fact, they're all over the country. And I know a lot of parents are not interested in their kids going out of state, and they're really not interested in their kids moving too far away from home right now, because they still need us, right? So, you know, looking at these different programs and understanding that you might start in one of these programs. A lot of these programs are, you know, kind of transitioning and moving them along. And then a lot of kids go on from these programs into four-year universities. So if your child maybe doesn't have an intellectual disability, you're not thinking about some of these programs, you're thinking about traditional university. We've got kids that are on the autism spectrum that have genius IQs that are, you know, math-centric and you know, will be highly successful in some type of an engineering field. There's lots of programs out there. And again, some of these programs are going to work better with your students with disabilities, and some of them are not, okay? So another place that you can go is ThinkCollege. ThinkCollege.net is the only directory of its kind, and it has over 309 colleges and universities that offer post-secondary education for students with intellectual disabilities. And you can search by state. So if you have family out of state, like maybe, okay, this program is wonderful, and because I have family out of state, it would be okay. However you want to go about looking at that, you can check that out. So this is the lady, and we have done a webinar with her in the past. Her name is Jody Glau. She is the founder and owner of Custom College Consulting. We like her a lot. She specializes in working with students who have learning challenges as they seek to find their best fit in post-secondary education. So this is where I was talking about these college planners. There's a lot of great college planners out there, but when they are not nuanced and special needs, I think that there's challenges. So they are really good at telling the average neurotypical kid and family, this is what you should do, and here's the hoops that you should, you know, jump through. But she's going to really meet with the family, meet with the student. She spends her time traveling across and checking out these programs, boots on the ground, in place, so that way she can really provide good guidance as it relates. So if you're a family, of course, this is a fee for service that she charges, but if you're a family and you feel overwhelmed and you feel like, listen, this is not my wheelhouse, I cannot do this, I want to do it and I want it to be good, but I need somebody else to help me, Jody's your girl when it comes to that. April, do we have some questions? Okay, I didn't hear you, but I see. Okay. So the College Living Experience, CLE, they have programs across the country. Now, this is a secondary thing that you would pay for, because you would pay for the program at the college or the university, and then you would pay for the College Living Experience. But a lot of these programs, I just want to let you know, a lot of these universities and schools have programs where your student can live on campus, and they have some similar programs on campus for students. So just check this out. But this one goes alongside the student. So maybe they're going to blend, for instance, and living at the College Living Experience. So they're learning independent skills, social development, academic and career development, and maybe they're taking part-time classes or full-time classes at the university or the community college. So this is something to look at as well. But again, this is also where you would be paying for both. So it is important to note that for budget concerns. Bloom Consulting, this is one I would say if you're taking notes, again, we're going to send you a copy of these slides and the recording. But Bloom Consulting is an organization that I would say is definitely worth checking out. They've got a lot of good programs designed to support neurodiverse college students. And they have like these wraparound programs, and they're, they have a support team, and they're, building their problem solving skills. They're empowering the students and getting the students to move more away from dependence on mom and dad and becoming more reliant on themselves and believing in themselves and taking themselves to the next level. This is an additional charge. It's $1,000 per month private pay. But if it's in line with the IPE for VR, it might be covered by them as well. And Bloom is contracted with vocational rehab. So if your students are already in vocational rehab, that may be something up for a discussion with your counselor. And we don't ever say what VR is going to pay for and what they're not going to pay for. I can't do that. But VR does have budgets, and they do pay for a lot of things if it's in line with the program to get your loved one to work. So you can just be aware of that. But Bloom Consulting also has other programs. They also have other testing. One thing that they do is they do vocational evaluations. So if you have a student that says, okay, maybe I'm not ready for school yet, we're thinking about going to work, Bloom Consulting can do a vocational evaluation. They can do that private pay, but those vocational evaluations, if they're in VR, those are often covered by VR and no out-of-pocket cost to the family. So you're going to want to, kind of learn a little bit more about that. So April, here's where you shine. So when, we talk about workforce commission and we talk about workforce solutions, and we start getting confused and glossed over. Some of you may have heard of programs such as Summer Earn and Learn, or what we call pre-employment training services. And then we've been throwing around the term of VR. April, can you dispel our confusion between workforce solutions and workforce commissions and kind of the difference of those programs for these families? Guys, these are important programs. And if you don't know about them, you totally should. Your school has a VR counselor. So talk to us about that, April.
Sure. Within the workforce system, we have what's called workforce solutions, and that is for the general public. Anybody within most workforce solutions offices is vocational rehabilitation. And vocational rehabilitation is a part of the office or the section of Texas Workforce Commission that is going to focus on helping people who have a disability be able to get education and training and jobs. What we say is we want to help people maintain, obtain, or upskill in their positions. So if you're a student, obviously you're going to be working on obtaining. And so those services are a little bit more detailed and individualized. They start at age 14 and go all the way to 22 for our student program. However, I do caution parents that at this time of the year, if you have a senior that has not yet applied for vocational rehabilitation services, which I'll outline in a moment, please do so before December, because if not, they are moved to an adult caseload, and they don't get as much of the tender care sometimes in the adult caseload as they would get in the student caseload. You get a few more services. Pre-educational services and training. Some of the things that we are going to do is we're going to take the student and assess what they want to do. And then we're going to do that through a variety of services that are offered and testing. And all of that is individualized to your student. And then we will begin to look at what are the gaps. How can we get from point A to point B? And I'm a hand talker. And we're going to take those gaps and we're going to do what's called an IPE. It's an individual plan for employment. So it's different than the IEP, so it is part of the IEP with the goals. So with that individual plan for employment, those are the services that we'll provide to get that student from point A to point B, which ultimately we want them to be employable and sustainable. We want their last day of high school to look like their first day of real life. And that's why we provide those services. And another thing
April,
that we do. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask about like, so if we have a family that they're just really interested in getting this moving, and the fastest way to get this moving, because you said, you know, we got to get this done before December, and I know that we can self-refer to VR, but in this example, would they be better to reach out to their counselor in the school since the school has started to get that moving faster? Or can you give us some recommendations there?
I absolutely can. If you have already reached out and you have done the application online and you have not heard back, I always say if you can connect with your counselor in your school, do so. If your school for some reason does not know who the counselor is, that's why I had those first slides on there. Go ahead, scan that, call the phone number. If you know where your local workforce solutions office is that houses your vocational rehabilitation counselor, they have a counselor of the day, and you can do a walk-in even without an appointment. Some other ways that you can do it is you can get, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say the Start My VR, but someone told me, someone else in the organization said that Start My VR is moving slower right now, that maybe that's not the fastest way to go about doing it. And so I think we do need some encouragement for some people. We have some people that have had some frustrating experiences, or they're not. Tell us what we need to do. If we're calling, nobody's calling us back, we've applied, we've heard nothing, or we're running into brick walls with our own counselor that has already been established. Can you give just some tips? I know that you guys have had a lot of changes of, you know, staff and things like that, and it's been a challenge ever since COVID. Welcome to everybody's world since COVID, right? But how do they navigate that? Because I think, you know, our lives are full to begin with, and it's frustrating. We're just trying to get help.
Absolutely. And for those of you that have had a disappointing or frustrating experience, I am sorry. I know that does happen, and I'm not unrealistic about that. What I would say is to go ahead, and if you know who your navigator is, if you don't, you can email me or call me. All of my information is here. I'm happy to get people in contact. But that state phone number that is in the slides that I gave, yeah, it's the 800-628-5115, I believe, is a great number to go to be able to call. And again, walk-in is great. And you can just say, I'm frustrated, I've called, or I've emailed, or I've signed up, and I've not heard anything back. I have somebody here in the comments that say they've had a great experience with TWC call center at 512-936-6400, and they can look at the progress on your case. And I would say if you have applied online and you've done the Start My VR, make sure you keep your case number. There's going to be a number assigned to you. Keep that case number and have that prepared when you call in. It's very helpful because they usually will take your last name and your case number to look at that. So hopefully that will help some people, but definitely if you are having a lot of frustrating experiences, you can do a walk-in, you can call into a workforce solutions office and just say, listen, I have not heard back from the Start My VR portal or from my counselor. And you can always request to change counselors. There have been people who have done that, and it's not the end of the world. Not every personality meshes, and not every counselor is going to respond the way that you want to. And that's why the services are individualized. So I hope that helps a little bit.
And I would just say, don't give up. The thing is if your student needs help, and one thing that you said earlier, April, that is pretty cool, is that services start as early as 14. And in our minds, we always think, well, the first time you can work is 16, but they can be doing training and building their skills and building up to be able to go to work soon after they turn 16. So you don't have to wait till 16. And if you're late, there's VR services for adults as well. So these services are 14 to 22, but there are services for adults as well. So just keep that in mind. But I think that it's a wonderful program, and I know that a lot of companies have had staffing issues and things like that. But all in all, the testing, the IPE, and kind of working with your student, we have a lot of clients that have their loved one has worked at Kroger for 10 years, or they've worked at a hospital for 10 years, where they got started in these programs. They did summer earn and learn, and it grew into something more. So it's just worth checking it out. Okay. So did we miss anything, April, on that topic?
I do see one question. It said, shouldn't schools be more involved once the student turns 14? And in the state of Texas, yes, your school should be involved in transition planning. It's actually required in Texas. Federally, it's only required at age 16. But I will say the nice thing about getting involved with vocational rehabilitation at age 14 is it adds to continuity of services. It makes transition easier for the parents as well as for the student. One thing we often don't talk about for a parent is it's hard to let go at an appropriate time, to know when to let go. So if you start at age 14, it's a gentler exposure to begin letting go. And you also have a partner in VR services that is with you after high school. So I hope that helps answer that.
Yeah, that is very true. And I think like any of these programs, so maybe they're in it for a little while, it's not never ending, but there's so many other programs and availability of job coaches and other things. And the more our students can grow, I know as hard as it is as a mom, as they're spreading their wings and things like that, but the more that they can grow and evolve, the better outcomes there's going to be in the future. Oh, and I just wanted to comment on the school. Like, shouldn't the school guidance counselors and things like that be involved? Shouldn't they be spearheading in this and that? And what I would say is a lot of them do, and a lot of them, a lot of them are spread very, very, very thin. They might be covering 3 schools. They're one person covering 3 schools and stuff. And so what I would say is the parental involvement and reaching out, finding out what's available, letting them know that you're definitely interested and you want to work with them. I would provide that advice, because I think it is an impossibility for one guidance counselor to blanketly make sure that every kid that is in, special ed or has learning disabilities or has accommodations or in these programs. It would be impossible for them to spearhead that all and to keep it. But I would say reaching out to them, they definitely know about the programs and they'll be happy to work with you on that. Okay, so what about funding? We talked about the FAFSA early, the free application for federal student aid. The FAFSA is available each year on October 1st for the following school year. So your FAFSA is already open. If you've got a kid that is a senior, the FAFSA open in October. Scholarships, community-based, school-based, disability, disease-based, sport, music-based, band-based. There's a lot of funding out there. What I would say is, again, I have a spreadsheet and I worked very closely with my student. This isn't gonna say, you gotta do those scholarship applications and kind of, get in their face about it, because it's a lot. And a lot of these scholarship applications ask a lot. And a lot of the stuff kids don't even know, they wouldn't even know. So parent involvement on these scholarship applications is going to be important too. I know we've got some families that they've already got all the money set aside for college and they don't want to mess with scholarships. We've got other families that grandma and grandpa's paying for college and they don't want to mess with scholarships. And then we've got a lot of families that the scholarships matter, and defraying some of the additional expenses that come along with higher education is going to be important. So of course, a 529 college savings plan can pay for college, but there's a 529A ABLE account can pay for a variety of things for an individual with a disability, including college. So if you have a 529C for college and you're not sure if your loved one is going to college, you can convert a portion of that each year from a 529C to a 529A that will give you more flexibility of where you spend it without a penalty, without penalties and taxes. Because a 529A can pay for anything that can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, including college, including a transition program. I mean, there's so many things. So just keep that in mind. And then also, as April was talking about the IPEs, the vocational rehab may provide support if it's in line with the goals established in the plan. So there could be support for higher education. Do you want to comment on that? And we can take some questions as well.
Sure. With the IPE, if it is determined that the student needs additional education in order to obtain the type of employment that they would like to, and that they are able to be able to do that type of training, then often, and again, we don't promise because we're not that individual caseworker, but most of the time, not only can they get funding for the actual education, they can get some of their supplies paid for. So oftentimes when I'm talking with students that have a background with CPS and they've got that CPS educational waiver, what will happen is if they have a disability, if they can enroll for vocational rehabilitation services, they'll have their tuition paid for, but they can get books and supplies and sometimes gas cards and other things that they're going to need here and there to fill in the gaps that they may have, where they would say, great, I have tuition, but now what am I going to do about books? I have no money for this. So that's the nice thing about vocational rehabilitation. With it being individualized, those services are going to be determined on a personal basis. And so, yes, you can get sometimes your entire college paid for, especially if you dual qualify for WIOA services, which is a whole nother ball of wax. And you can ask about that when you walk in the Workforce Solutions office or give them a call. But yeah.
Perfect. And so, you know, we talked about the offices of disability not being created equally. We also talked about that the college application process. Now there is like the one app that you can do, but like when things open and when things close and things like that, and how many, you know, how many students they're taking, and it's all different for all of these different schools. Well, the first thing that I want to tell you, because it's September, the one myth that I had whenever my daughter started her senior year was that, you know, at Christmas break, we can just start on all these applications and everything like that. Time is now. A lot of the scholarship applications, some of them won't even open till spring, but many of the big ones will be closed before Christmas break. So this whole spreadsheet business, which seems ridiculous, you're going to need that for the scholarships. If you're considering applying for scholarships, because the applications open on different dates, they close on different dates, the requirements are different. Some will require an essay, some will not. There's a lot of different things that you need to be knowing about, and you guys need to be starting on that process now, not waiting till December, because you're going to miss out on big funding if you do that. And in this presentation, we have a lot of links to scholarships out there. So when I was talking about like disease-based, community-based, school-based, of course we have academic-based, but some of our kids have learning disabilities. Some of our kids have intellectual disabilities, and they're not going to be in the top 5% of their class. So what? There are still scholarships out there for your student, is what I'm telling you, okay? So if you have younger kids that are not seniors, they're starting their freshman year, what I would tell you is get them volunteering. Know what they can do and what they can't do. If your child isn't in band, I'm pretty sure they're not going to get a band scholarship. If they don't play sports, I'm pretty sure they're not going to get a sports scholarship. And if they're not in a top 5% of their class are probably not going to get an academic scholarship. So think outside the box. This is what I did as a parent. What can we do? What can we get? How do we get this paid for? And so volunteering and meaningful volunteer work is going to be a key to that. And we'll talk more about that. So we talked about ABLE accounts. I just want to just very quickly, you can have up to $100,000 in an ABLE account before they disqualify for SSI. You can basically, I'm going to flip to the next page. You can put $17,000 a year into an ABLE account. The account grows tax-free. There's tax-free distributions. If the individual with the disability is working, they can put an additional $13,590 into the ABLE account. Why might you need an ABLE account? The ABLE account is not counted against them for the means-based test for SSI and Medicaid purposes. So for most of our kids that have disabilities, we want their assets to be below $2,000. If they're above $2,000, they're not going to qualify for SSI, and they're not going to qualify for Medicaid. If they don't qualify for Medicaid, they're also not going to qualify for Medicaid waivers such as HCS, Texas Home Living, any of those Medicaid waivers. So an ABLE account is definitely a place that we can have money. You can pay for college out of an ABLE account. And basically, if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. Now, one thing that you need to be aware of, states may be able to claim reimbursement for expenses paid by Medicaid. Any additional funds can be distributed to designated beneficiaries or rolled over to other family members. So we kind of just talked about it. If it can be construed as achieving a better life, you can definitely pay for it out of an ABLE account. So most things are construed as achieving a better life. Also, out of an ABLE account, you can pay for food and shelter out of an ABLE account. While you can pay for food and shelter out of a special needs trust, there would be a 1/3 reduction to SSI if you pay for it out of a special needs trust. So you can actually pay for food and shelter out of an ABLE account without that 1/3 reduction. So that is kind of the why behind it. So as we're kind of coming through this, and April, you commented on this, like if they're in the CPS system or DFPS, if you have a loved one that was maybe adopted through the state, like through the DFPS system, there is a waiver that these kids go to college for free. So in case you forgot it, if you adopted a child, you have a child through CPS, then they do go to school at the state school. So now they're going to go to school at a private school for free, but the state schools, they can go to school for free. A lot of our families have kids that have diagnoses. And as a result of those diagnoses, we find ourselves at the Children's Hospital or various specialty clinics like neurology, cardiology, oncology. We could just go on and on and on. But when you're at the Children's Hospital, there's typically someone called a child life specialist at the specialty clinic that you go to. So you can ask to speak to them. Oftentimes they have a list of scholarships for kids with disabilities or kids with disease-specific, issues. And so don't be afraid to ask them. There may be programs or an endowments that somebody just, somebody passed away and they left it to them, and there's, money for that. So definitely check that out with the child life specialist next time you go, or email them. So we're not going to go one by these. We have pages and pages of scholarships for you to check out. They do update from time to time, and so you may need to refresh a link or whatever. We try to keep those links refreshed as much as possible. The Terry Scholarship is one that's near and dear to my heart, and they're out of Houston, but it's for Texans, for Texas schools, Texas state schools. Here's the schools that the Terry Foundation Scholarship takes, and they're looking for the Terry Scholars, a decent scholastic record and ability, financial need, leadership potential, and character. So these kids that get out there and have actively volunteered, they are a good potential. So what I would tell you is check out the Terry Foundation Scholarship. This is a scholarship that we got, and we were fully funded for 4 years of college. So We didn't hit any of the other dots that I was mentioning: band, art, sports, top 5, all of the little boxes. We didn't check any of those boxes, but what we did is we had a powerful story. We were overcomers, and we were successful anyway, and we had 900 service hours. Okay, so you can be fully funded. You can earn these scholarships, but again, you have to meet your child where they are. Let's set those realistic expectations. My realistic expectations of we're not getting any of those other scholarships, so what can we get? And then we worked our plan that way, and we succeeded. But we had a plan, and we worked the plan, and we had our spreadsheets, and we knew the deadlines, and we knew how to play the game. But this organization is a wonderful organization, so check out their website, and maybe this might be a good fit for you, for your student here. So again, all these disease-specific scholarships, we've got websites for all of them. Check them out. We're just page after page of scholarships. There are 4-H scholarships. If your kids are in 4-H, there's rodeo scholarships. Those are some of the ones that are big ones. The 4-H scholarships are pretty hard to get. So if your kid's not already in 4-H and they're a senior, it's a day late and a dollar short. But if they're, entering high school, you can get them involved in 4-H. There's rodeo scholarships. I'm talking about the big ones. What I had to do, because there's only so many hours in the day, so on my spreadsheet, I had a column of what was the scholarship worth to us. Is this worth $500 or is this worth $20,000? Because that helps me prioritize which ones we were going to apply for first, right? The $500 is going to pay for one book, and I'm not being a snob or anything. But if it's 25 or 30 grand a year, $500 isn't helping you that much. But 20 grand, on the other hand, really is. So if you only have so many hours in the day to get these in, so just I would look at that, look at what the requirements are. What I found is sometimes these scholarships that are offering $500, they are more difficult in applying for that than the one applying for $20,000. I have to jump through 27 hoops for the $500 and only 5 for the 20. And so you're going to just want to make sure that you're aware of that, because it is a very, very time consuming question. So everybody is going to get a copy of today's slides with all of these links, all of the things that we're talking about. So you don't have to write everything down. Some of the books that we tell you people to consider, it's probably up to date for 2023, the 5th Guide to Colleges that Change Lives. There's a lot of colleges out there, private colleges, that have good offices of disability that really work with individuals with disabilities, and these kids come out thriving. So colleges that change lives, and this learning disability book, these are all books to consider, and you can kind of get those on Amazon. So when it comes to planning, we're talking about college. There's so many things that I know are on your mind right now. If you've got a senior, the year goes by fast. So I would just say, start your spreadsheet, start doing your research, work with your student, be very, very hands-on and involved with your student. And I know we're taking a step to letting our kids go, but what I'm telling you, when I saw this, I have this background and this financial background, and I couldn't believe some of this stuff. And so I'm just telling you that your kids, even your neurotypical kids, aren't a match for all of the stuff that goes in with these applications and the FAFSA and everything that goes on along with that. So things to keep on your radar. We do a number of webinars every single month, every week, on topics for special needs planning. If you've got a kid that's about to turn 18, you've got a lot of things on the radar. Making sure that we don't have more than $2,000 in their name is important. Considering alternatives to guardianships. We talked about power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. You want to, some of these programs, if the child is under a full guardianship, they won't take them. So you need to know that. You need to check with these programs that you're interested in and asking them, do they accept children that are under guardianship? So you want to be aware of that. But just, a lot of the things are just making sure that we have money in the right buckets. We want to preserve the eligibility for state and federally funded programs. A lot of our children have not qualified for SSI all this time because it's based off of your income and assets, and you simply make too much. But when they turn 18, it's based off of their income and assets. And right now, SSI is $914 a month. So again, when we're thinking about funding, you know, that pays for food and shelter. So if there, you know, that can defray some of the costs that we're thinking about. So when it comes to, you know, the future and planning, all of our webinars live on our YouTube channel, the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel. This link is going to take you to all of the upcoming webinars that we have coming up over the next month that you guys can subscribe to. You can check them out by title and, you know, you sign up for the ones that make sense for the step that you're on. We work on a collaborative team here at CPG. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, and top of the table when it comes to our firm. So we always like people to have some faces with names because we do work collaboratively here. We always offer free consultations. So if we've talked about things that you feel like you have deeper questions on, that you want to go deeper with, reach out to us. You will be able to hover your camera over this QR code. It'll take us to our calendar, and you can schedule a free consultation with us at a time that works best for you. So I think we're out of time. Do we have any additional questions that we need to answer before we go for today?
We've got the where can we get a copy of the webinar, and as you said, it'd be hosted on your YouTube channel for Consolidated Planning, and people can search it if I'm correct on that. And then
we're also going to email it out to everybody. Anybody who's registered is going to get an email either later today or tomorrow, and they're going to have a link to the recording, and they're going to have a copy of the slides for sure.
Okay, I think that is
all right. Thanks everyone for taking your lunch with us.
Have a good afternoon.
Certainly been my pleasure. Thank you, April. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.